Welcome to Making Your Mark After the Interview. My name is Rachel Dolachek, and I am an instructor of business communication in the Department of Applied Business Studies at Fort Hays State University. This session is designed to help you think through your steps post-interview. You'll spend plenty of time perfecting your resume, your cover letter, and your online application, but you're not done there. The steps you take post-interview will determine if you move forward as a candidate for the position. So let's think through this scenario. You recently completed an application for a position you've been dreaming of since starting college. The employer is impressed with your cover letter, your resume, and your references and calls you for an interview. You finish the interview, you think it went great. What's next? There are a number of things that should be on your to-do list after the interview. If you didn't ask for a timeline, you'll want to ask the interviewer for the timeline and what you can expect. And that's really something that you should do at the very end of the interview, maybe when they're asking you if you have questions. In addition to that, take notes about the interview. Write it down. Who interviewed you? What went well with your interview? What could you improve on? Write all of these things down so that you'll remember and can go back to your list and your notes, whether it be a few weeks down the road or maybe the next time you complete an interview or a job search process. You'll also want to write a thank you note. And if you have the names written down of those who interviewed you, you can personalize that thank you note. How you send that thank you note will depend on how you interviewed. So if you did an in-person interview, perhaps you would want a handwritten note. If you did an online interview, sending your thank you message online via email might be appropriate. The time frame in which you're sending that thank you note might vary as well, depending on your situation. Last year we had the intern queen on campus at Fort Hays State University, and her suggestion was if you're in a situation where you interview face-to-face, take a handwritten note hours after you complete your interview. So have some note cards, thank you notes ready to go, and then you can go to your car and personalize them and take them back in. However, if you complete an online interview 24 to 48 hours after you complete that interview, you should be sending a thank you note. And then remember, start prepping for the next round. This could only be round one of interviews, and most organizations will have a multi-level and multi-step process for their interviews. And so even though you're completing a round one telephone interview or Zoom interview, they may have candidates in a round two scenario, either online or face-to-face. So take as many notes as you possibly can for that first interview. It will help you in your future interview process. Here's another scenario to consider. Let's say you finish the job interview and are offered the job on the spot. The employer asks you, how much do you think you're worth? What do you say? Well, before you answer that question, you should have done your research. So before going into the interview, put yourself in a good position. Consider the company size, the location, the position you're applying for, and your experience level, and look that information up in terms of salary. There are several different websites that have this information: salary.com, glassdoor.com, payscale.com. Any one of these might help you. Those were suggested by our Big Interview service, which all Fort Hays State students have access to Big Interview through our Career Services office. Big Interview also suggested delaying the conversation as long as possible. So if the employer asks you, how much do you think you're worth, or what salary are you expecting for this position, try to delay the conversation by saying something like, I expect the salary to be based on industry and my experience. And that may suffice for that employer. However, there are employers that may try to continue to ask, what specific salary amount are you looking for? In that case, you can rely on the research that you've done and maybe even offer a salary range based on market value. If you've been offered the job, first of all, congratulations. Make sure that you are enthusiastic and gracious about the offer before you start negotiations. And if you're considering a different salary, remember that there's a difference between total compensation and salary. So a higher salary may not be a possibility for that particular employer, but perhaps the benefits such as insurance or days off or a signing bonus are worth considering. So determine what your priorities are before you go into the interview and be ready for that conversation in case it happens. With preparation and research before the job interview, you'll be ready to make your mark after the interview. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video and considering the steps you'll take after your next interview.